Welcome to the road to growth, success of an entrepreneur.
We've raised the bar.
Learn firsthand from successful business owners and create your own path to success.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
It's time to hit the road to growth with team lead of the Enriquez Group, Realtor Vinny.
Hi, all you Road to Growth listeners. Today I have Rachel Moore. She's a psychotherapist at Rachel Moore Counseling. And before we got on the mic, I guess she wasn't fully aware, and maybe some of our listeners aren't fully aware, but we do these episodes now live post-COVID and everything like that. So we're doing through StreamYard. So you can watch us if you're only listening to the audio aspect of this, but this is live. This is try to be as real as possible and allow people to get a full understanding of the people we have on here, the lucky people like Rachel that we're lucky enough to have on here. So thank you, Rachel, for being on here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to chatting. This is exciting.
So with your background, I mean, well, not necessarily your background, but you're a psychotherapist, but focuses on creative people that have dealt with some sort of trauma in the past. Is that kind of a quick synopsis?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of, as we were talking about before, I do think that everybody, has some sort of particular challenges that they've faced in their life. You could say everybody has trauma. We use the term like big T trauma and little t trauma, capital T and small t trauma. I mean, as I was saying earlier before we recorded, before we were on too, like just being a human being tends to involve some traumatic experiences. And so that's kind of, it's almost like I see my business as two separate things. I'm dealing with trauma in the work that I do. And then the people I primarily serve are creative people, because that's sort of how I identify and see myself. And I feel like I have an understanding of that type of mind. I don't know if I can describe or define that type of mind, to be totally honest with you, because I'm kind of in it. So those are kind of, it's kind of like I help people who are creative, and we oftentimes do focus on trauma in the past that either might be affecting their creativity now as adults, might be affecting their relationships, might be affecting their work, or just, all aspects of their life. Yeah.
So you said the idea of big T and little t. So I'm assuming it's some sort of spectrum. And like, what kind of quantifies, I guess, little t compared to big T?
Sure. Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind is that it really all is dependent upon the individual experience as well. So it's kind of hard to have like a, like, oh, these are the ones we consider big T traumas and these are the little ones. There is a question that I do ask, though, when we're doing the type of therapy that I do, which we can talk about more later if you want to, EMDR. I just ask, okay, 0 to 10, how disturbing is this memory to you now? We have 1 foot in the past, 1 foot in the present, right? You're not totally back in the memory, because that's not what we want. You're not totally in the present, because we want to think about the memory. Okay, when you think about the memory, how disturbing is it 0 to 10? They may say 1 or 2, they may say 9 or 10, they may say something in the middle. So it really is kind of up to the individual what is a big trauma and what isn't. I mean, if we're to talk generally, I think what people mostly think of is a big trauma might be like an earthquake or a car crash or a divorce or something like that. Interestingly, though, even when those big things happen, what really matters is, as far as trauma goes, oftentimes is what happens after that. Like if you're a child and something really big and confusing happens, do you have people explaining it to you afterward and reflecting your feelings and, being compassionate towards you? That can affect how your brain processes and encodes that experience.
So the same situation that happens to one person, the next person can be a big T or a small T based off of how you take it.
Great. Yeah. Beautiful. And sort of based off, your own temperament, the person's temperament, as well as what happens in the situation after the trauma. Okay. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
What now, when I think of like a therapist, right? And you and especially how they create on movies and TV shows, sit there, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. That doesn't seem, at least from the outside looking in, a creative person talking there. How does a person like yourself that's very creative, as sing and very musical, I guess, brought up, get into this kind of field?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I know what the answer is. I will say that I think some of the skills of being a creative person do help. I mean, for example, another thing I'm involved with right now is improv, and I'm actually in an improv class specifically for therapists. So that's a lot of fun.
Oh, wow.
And I think that improv skills are really helpful for being a therapist. So, right, like the basic of improv is like saying yes and so that means, the yes part to me is listening, right? Like, oh yes, okay, and what else? Not like yes, but blah blah blah. Like I'm not sitting here giving advice, right? I'm not like, well, I'm the expert, and that's like to me that's not creative in a way. To be honest with you, is to say like, well, I'm the expert, and here's how you do it. Like that's kind of static, That's not really. Creative is like I don't know what my clients are going to come in with, every day. I may have an idea about, and we do have a treatment plan for EMDR and everything. I may have an idea about where we're going, but I don't know what's going to happen. So it's kind of like this today, right? It's like I know you asked me before we met if we wanted to talk beforehand or just wing it. And I was like, yeah, let's wing it, right? Because I think that's where a lot of the energy can be. And I will say too. This may sound like a little separate thing. The most healing part of therapy is the relationship.
Yeah.
So if I can have a good relationship with somebody where I'm sort of, again, using those skills of creativity as in being open, being interested, being curious, right? Well, we think of that like with creative people, like you have to have those things, right? To be a creative person, to make something, create something. And so if I can bring those skills into a relationship with somebody therapeutically, that can be really helpful. Yeah. So I don't know. I've never really thought about it that way. I actually really appreciate the question.
Well, and I guess like a therapist could almost be a coach, right? It could be defined as a coach because you're helping them get from a situation now to another situation in the future, or whoever they want to be, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. I think it's important to point out that there are very different rules around both of those jobs, if we're going to use those terms,
Yeah.
I think that certainly the techniques of each can go back and forth in certain ways. Yeah. Coaches aren't regulated. Anybody can call themselves a coach, which is fine. I was a coach for a while. I was a creativity coach when I was in school to be a therapist. And it was, it was cool. Therapists have a lot more like rules and regulations, stuff like that. As far as the actual process, I think you can say that there are skills that go back and forth for sure.
Well, the reason why I was trying to almost bring it to like I guess a basic understanding for anyone listening right now is it seems like the therapist or the coach, there's different ways of helping someone get to the point where you're basically almost regurgitating what they're saying in a different light, and other ones that are more involved, I guess, in trying to help them move along. Is that kind of question? And
I'm not sure. Tell me a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more about what you're asking.
So, I mean, I've had different coaches in sports or in business and things like that, where some of them almost, okay, well, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. And other ones that want to actually find out what you're saying and then be creative with finding a solution to your problem. Does that make sense?
Right. I think so.
And it with your background and seeing the unique people that you're working with, how are you allowing them to get from point A to point Z and getting through the trauma? Is it almost
Sure.
Yeah.
Actually, with EMDR, which stands for eye movement deprocessing, and excuse me, we're live, right? Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Totally awkward term. We really, in the therapy field, we need to come up with like snappier, like, more marketing type of things. We don't. So there's actually a whole process. There's an 8-phase sort of like process system, if you will. So it would take them through that. Now with anything, and this is part of why I like it. I think with anything creative, with anything you're doing in therapy, you have the structure, and within that structure is kind of where you can, kind of be creative, do things differently. I love there's one part of what we do where if the person is stuck, for example, like let's say they're stuck, that 0 to 10 question, how disturbing is it? And like let's say they're stuck at 7 or 6 or something like that, right? Then that's where we get to be creative, right? Okay. So, sometimes, like, this is going to sound a little wild maybe, but sometimes I even ask like, okay, there might be a younger part of you because here's another wild idea, is that there are younger parts of us that get a little stuck and kind of still act like children.
Huh.
And yeah, and I'll say, like, there might be a younger part of you that's keeping you stuck. For example, just, no, we can't resolve this because I have to hold on to this memory. Right? A younger kid would say that, right? Like, I have to hold on to this memory to be safe, or I have to hold on to this memory to honor somebody, maybe a grandparent or something, if there's something traumatic happened. And so the adult, wouldn't necessarily think that way, but there's this younger part that gets in the way. So we do this whole exercise on working with that younger part and talking to it and asking it, like, okay, what do you need? What are you feeling? And then the adult part will talk to the younger part and maybe give some advice. I know it probably sounds really wild, and it's very, very effective in my experience. So I have to make the decision in that moment when somebody's stuck, like, okay, what do we do now, right? And that, I think, is where the training and the creativity comes in, because the training gives you the tools. The creativity is like, okay, which one would be the most appropriate here, and how do I use it with this client, right?
How do you understand that the person that's stuck is the younger self and not the current self?
I ask.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm very open. Again, I'm very open. Like, I may be wrong. I may be, that whole theory may be wrong, to be honest with you. I mean, I noticed that it works, so I continue to use it. Yeah. But, oftentimes they might say, like, no, this is maybe, here's what's something that can happen too, is that there might be something currently going on in their life that's keeping them stuck, right? I have to do this, or I have to believe this, or I have to think this because this thing in my life is happening right now. So we talk through it, we process through it. Yeah.
Let's go to your younger self when you were growing up. Okay. So I can put the pieces that you were creative at a young age, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you also very like helpful, trying to help people, and like,
I think so. I mean, it's funny. Like, it's kind of hard to tell. Kind of like I said with, like, what does being creative mean? What is a creative mind like? I'm like, I don't know. It just happens. I kind of feel the same way about helping people or wanting to explore that. I don't think I mentioned to you, or I may have talked to you before about, I used to be a journalist. And actually, when I was in 4th grade, I made a newspaper. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah. So I've always been interested in people's stories and kind of what makes them tick, what's happening, like in a family system or in a group system, or so a lot of creativity with that. I mean, I think that there's a lot of curiosity about that. I think that as far as being helpful, it's just fun, right? It's like, we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out what's going on. And if I can be of use to somebody, that's awesome. I mean, I go into sessions with clients, or, what am I trying to say? Like, my whole goal is to be productive, right? like let's do something that works. Let's make this work. And if not, let's do something different. And if that doesn't work for somebody, that's okay too. Yeah. Maybe I'd refer them out or do something else. Yeah.
So that 4th grader, you said 4th grade, right? When you made the newspaper?
Yeah.
Did you sell the newspaper, or was it just for family and friends?
We did it. It was for school. Nobody. This wasn't an assignment. My stepdad's family was in the newspaper business, so I had some influence there. It was for school, and we did accept donations. It was free, and I remember somebody gave me like a 50-cent piece, and I kept that thing for a really long time. I probably have it around here somewhere.
Was that the first time that you went into like the entrepreneur mindset, I guess? Because that's fairly entrepreneurial.
Yeah. I've always been, and I'm so glad I'm talking to you, and you brought up the thing about being an entrepreneur too. And you brought me on as a therapist. At first I was like, I don't know how I fit in, but that's fine, But that's the thing. Even today on Facebook in a therapist group, somebody said, "Oh, business, I hate business." And I'm like, why? Right? I don't understand. Like, I think it's exciting to reach people, and I tell people, like, for example, with marketing, sometimes I'll help other therapists with marketing because I love it. And I will say, like, to me, marketing is letting my ideal client know that I exist. Like, how cool is that when somebody who's looking for somebody like me finds me, how much would I like to find somebody, right, who was really ideal for me as a client? So like, I don't see what's like bad or evil about that. Like, and people are like, oh, I don't want to sell myself. It's like, well, don't sell yourself, sell your service, right? You're not, that sometimes I think, especially with therapists too, I think because we are like, we kind of are the service that we're providing in a way, like our brains and our experiences and everything. And I think that sometimes it just gets a little too intertwined and confusing for people, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I love what you said right there. It's basically the opportunity to define your ideal client, right? How long
To
did it
find
take?
them, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, how long did it take you to understand who your ideal client was?
Well, I remember when I became a therapist, I was like, who am I going to serve? I don't know. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, people like me, right? Like people who already, I used to run a bunch of meetup groups, and I would take people to like all the local museums, you know, Balboa Park and things like that. And these were always usually, you know, really creative artist type people. I can't necessarily see people as clients who I know personally, you know, and yet those are my people. So I realized like, okay, like, and actually a friend of mine who's a marketing expert helped me. She said, I said, you know, I don't know what to do because I can't necessarily market to the people that I know because I can't have them as clients. We call that a dual relationship, having two relationships where, you know, it's like, well, what's your real purpose here? It gets confusing. And she said, well, so then you just market to the people that they know. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, those people. Okay, I get it. So it did like at one point, you know, pretty early in my career, which was good. But I do think it's funny that I just couldn't figure out like who I was going to serve. I'm like, well, of course I know that.
How do you, I mean, being in real estate, right? We see, me and my team, we see people in like the highs and the lows. Right.
Yes.
And you start building the relationships, and for you're dealing with people in the lows and probably the highs too when they get those wins.
Yeah.
And you start building the relationships, bonds.
Yeah.
How do you separate, right, work and not turning them to friends, or going, I really like this person. Can I not see you anymore? Can I basically become a friend? Like, how do you do that?
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. And I love that you brought up the connection actually between being a real estate person and being a therapist. Yeah. So there are a lot of similarities, right? Like helping, like you said, like helping people through those low times, celebrating with the higher experiences, you know? So I really did have to make a conscious decision about how I wanted to do this work. I don't know if you know, like, we have to have 3,000 hours of supervised experience before we can even sit for the licensing exam.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that takes at least 2 years. I think it took me like 3 or 4. For the first year, I was doing coaching, and I didn't even, like, for a year, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to do that or not because of that, because of 3,000 hours, because of what we're talking about. I'm like, I don't know how I can do that. You know, it's like, it's such a unique relationship. In a way, you become really close with people, but it's not reciprocal. And I know I'm kind of going around the question a little bit, but the first thing I do is I make that clear up front. You know, we have informed consent, we call it, which is the paperwork people get, you know, about therapy, and we talk about it too. You know, it's like, you know, why can't we go to, you know, a client might say like, why can't we go get coffee together, right? Like, why can't we do that? And I like to tell them that, like, part of the benefit is that they don't have to worry about me, right? I take care of that outside of session. Whatever's happening for me, you know, maybe we call this, the technical terms are like transference. That's when a client might see you as like a mom figure or something like that. And then counter transference is when I start to have some reactions in session, right? I take care of that outside of session. That's not the client's responsibility. It's different from having a friend where the relationship is a little more equal. And there is a power differential in therapy. And I think it's important to talk about it. There are things that are good about it. There are things challenging about it. And yeah, one of the challenges is, I really, 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 really like all of my clients. I'm really kind of getting teary about it. I like them. I care about them. And in this life, you know, this is the relationship we're going to have.
Well, I think the key takeaway right there was you laid the groundwork, You basically lay the boundaries out for the clients
Yep.
before anything gets going, so there's no
Yep.
misconceptions of what could happen.
Exactly. It's super important. And I think the more you're in this work, I think you tend to forget that people don't just know these things,
Yeah.
because we're doing it so much. We're like, well, yeah, of course, that we can't be friends. No. It's important to talk about it. Yeah.
Well, let's jump back again. You're talking about the singing, vocal,
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah.
What did that entail? What is?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. Where do I start? When I was a kid, I did a lot of instrumental stuff, so like piano and saxophone and drums and all kinds of things like that. And I didn't really get into singing until I was 30 and lived up in LA. And actually, there was this great community college up there in Torrance, near where I lived, and yeah, I just started taking singing classes there. Ended up learning like an opera aria and really loving it. Then I moved to San Diego. I was part of the San Diego Women's Chorus for a long time, and then just found different opportunities around town. The most fun was that I was an alternate in the chorus, so maybe 6 or 7 shows for the Hunchback of Notre Dame at La Jolla Playhouse. We got to be in the choir, and that was absolutely fantastic. And I knew, for lots and lots of reasons, I knew this was a once in a lifetime thing. So I soaked it in, I knew it because I know that singing isn't my primary vocation, right? So I won't get all these opportunities too often. And also, this is kind of interesting too. I guess in productions like that, they don't often have a choir. And I'm very happy being in the choir. I don't want to act. I'm very happy just okay, Rachel, sit and sing or stand and sing. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. So anyway, but other types of things like singing Requiem down at Sparkles Theater with the ballet down there. Just every opportunity I can find, I just kind of take advantage of and meet cool people and have a good time.
Have you ever thought about either making that a focus or incorporating, I guess, more in your business? Is there, I don't know if there is any kind of synergy or anything like that?
It's funny, early on when I was singing, for whatever reason, and maybe this kind of speaks to the earlier question or thought that we had about therapists and business. Sometimes therapists have a weird, because they're too intertwined. Early on with singing, I realized I didn't want to be paid to sing.
Oh.
It was too close. It's too close to me. It's too much of and not in a bad way, but it's so much of self-expression. It's kind of spiritual to me. It's almost sacred to me. So I realized for myself that that wouldn't be the appropriate thing for me because it might ruin it. And I didn't want to ruin it, And I'm so glad, again, this is a great conversation because I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's how the therapists feel. Right? Because I have this other thing that is sort of I love my job and my job is great. And I think I do well at it and it's fine. I think that my heart though is kind of somewhere else. And that's okay. It's okay to have that separation for me. I don't want to have everything into one basket,
Yeah. I mean, having that, no, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, being that you have a good circle of other therapists, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you had to do it, you said 3,000 hours, right? Correct? For
Correct.
So you've had a lot of, I think, guidance and support, it sounds like, in this kind of sector.
Yeah.
How do therapists find what the cost they're going to charge for their clientele is? I mean, is that something that you're kind of taught through classes, word of mouth?
Not at all. Okay. No, they don't touch the B word of business in school. I'll tell you that much. It's really kind of weird. I had to self-teach myself all that, through workshops and things like that. God, that's such a good question. And it did even come up in a therapist group on Facebook just yesterday, I think. Okay, how to approach this. I often hear therapists say well, you should charge what you're worth. Again, I find that confusing because I said, I don't want to be paid for what I'm worth. I don't know. That's weird. I don't know. And it's not me, it's the service. And there is a difference, right? And that kind of ties into the question about, can we be friends or not? It's well, you are seeing me, but it's not all of me that you're experiencing, right? So I'm doing a job right now, So Yeah, it bothers me when I hear that, and I tell people, no, how much is your service, and how much will the market bear? How much your ideal clientele, like, what can they afford? Just to let you know, like, I don't accept insurance. Another route is for therapists to go through insurance. As far as I understand it, because I haven't dealt with it, when you go through insurance, you get paid what the insurance company says you're going to get paid.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a rate, maybe 85, $90 or something like that. There's a range, but I could speak for myself. In my business, I have a sliding scale. So that means that if you can't pay the fee, the top fee, then we can negotiate and find a fee that works for you. And what I do is I have an average in mind that I want to hit. And then that's fine for me. But it brings up so much. Speaking of psychology, it brings up so much because a lot of times, like, I hear therapists say too, like, oh, I gave this client a reduced fee, and then she came in with like her nails all done, and she's driving this fancy car, and I'm thinking to myself, and sometimes telling people, you know what? If I knew that I would have that response, and I would kind of have that judgment of people if I gave them a reduced fee, like, I wouldn't give a reduced fee. I don't think that's good for either person because it's not up to me. It's not up to me to judge how they spend their money, in my opinion. So how do they choose? I don't know. It's always it's kind of, if you're doing private pay, not insurance, it's kind of random and up to you. And somebody told me yesterday, like, oh, this business coach told me to raise my fee, and I kind of wanted to ask. It wasn't my business, but I kind of wanted to ask, like, why? What was the reason? Did they even say?
Well, I mean, I've had people on here that have talked about the idea that once they raise their fee, they had a better level of clientele. And I don't know, it came with the idea that the people were associating the higher price that they were paying with basically better value. And so it was kind of almost a mindset thing. And that's at least kind of where I've heard it, but it's such a tricky situation. I've had about 145 interviews with different business owners, and them trying to define the pricing that they charge. And it seems like it's usually having that network of people talking it with people in your own sector allows you to kind of self-evaluate your own price.
Yeah, I mean, there's a website which I actually recommend for people who are looking for therapists called Psychology Today, psychologytoday.com, and you can go on and see what people are charging in your area. And and see, like, okay, where do I fit in with this? I kind of had the advantage of working as an intern for those 3,000 hours. One of the jobs I had was to work at a private practice, and they already had kind of a fee structure set up. So it was something I could just easily follow when I was out on my own, and kind of, use that as a template. So yeah, the quality of client. That's interesting. That kind of struck my curiosity a little bit. I'm like, oh, what does that even mean? Here's the thing. Like, I do have a conversation with people because I do expect something, well, from all my clients, to be totally honest with you. And maybe especially if I'm giving them a discounted fee because I don't want to feel resentful. So here's what I say. I will tell them, like, here's what I value. I value your enthusiasm, commitment, willingness to do the work, because if that's true for you, like, I will meet you there and we will hit the road and we'll make it happen. And to be honest with you, that's what's fun for me, is to have, I have a colleague, I love her so much, and she's magical to me because she will take like a teenage boy and have him talking. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. Right? Somebody who traditionally is a little more reluctant in therapy, like, I'm not really good at that. What I am good at, and I think the best people I can work with are folks who, of course, we all, everybody's at a different pace, and that's not really what it's about. It's more about, are you committed to the process and just seeing how it goes. So,
also too, a creative mind. I mean, the way I probably look at a creative mind, and I feel that I have somewhat of a creative mind, is that you're constantly having ideas pop in there and going, okay, how can I make this work? How can I do this? And then you're like, I'll figure out how to get from point A to point B later on. But I like this nugget over here. Like Elon Musk talked about it, that he thought, and it took him a long time in his life to understand that not everyone thought like the way he thought.
Yes.
He sort of understand. He goes, "Wait, am I alien? What's wrong with me?" Like it's yeah.
I know. Well, that reminds me of something that's actually really important that I love to tell my clients. I think this relates a bit to what you're talking about. I think that either in our society or whatever, I think we get this idea that with personal growth, it goes like you start at point A and you have this set of problems, and then you do the work, and then you get to point Z and you don't have those problems anymore, and they're magically gone, and now you're better, and now you're not broken anymore. I don't know. These are some of the things that I hear. Okay. I tell my clients how I see personal growth, which is not a straight line, not linear, more like a spiral. So it's a spiral going up. And as you do the work, you kind of go up the side of the spiral and get more skills, get more insight, whatever it is. Here's the thing, though. The same issues will keep coming up along the spiral, right? So like maybe it's like, oh, I have a challenge with codependent relationships, right? Okay. You're probably going to notice that for the rest of your life. Here's the difference. You will change. You will be able to handle it differently. You will be able to see it differently. You will have different expectations. But as you grow, so you're changing and you're going up the spiral, the same things will be coming up, because oftentimes, I think is really important. Oftentimes I will hear clients feel really, and I feel bad for them, because they feel disappointed or defeated when they're like, oh, I thought I had, fixed this. I thought that I would never have to deal with this again. And I'm like, okay, let me explain. Just like me, just like you, just like everybody, you probably will have to deal with this again. You get to decide how you want to deal with it, with this particular hand in life that you've been dealt. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're helping them cope with basically the situation or what they're dealing with, and they're able to look at it in a different light. So no, totally makes sense.
Right. It doesn't mean the thing is going to never happen again.
Yeah.
It means that, yeah, you'll be able to handle it better next time and just kind of keep growing and growing and growing. It's how I see it. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's karma. I don't know if it's just family patterns. I don't know why we tend to, as people, kind of have the same issues come up over and over, but yeah.
Well, and I don't know your take on the person, but Dr. Joe Dispenza, I mean, I've heard some of his conversations. He was I think a chiropractor, but then he became like a therapist or a mindset coach or whatever it might be. But he talked about it that by the age of 35, we're a computer program, and you're basically when you basically do one thing, you start those pieces connect to something that you did as a child. It's like, why are you crying right now? Oh, because my dad did this when I was a kid, right? So you're almost changing the programming of the person.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I wouldn't use the word reprogramming, but we do say reprocessing, right?
Yeah, reprocessing.
You probably didn't even realize it. You pretty much just exactly explained what EMDR is all about.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes, because when a trauma happens, we said like when you're 8 years old or whatever, when a trauma happens, it can get stuck in your brain. And it's almost like when you think of it, it's almost like you can see, hear, feel, taste, touch, exactly. It's almost like it's happening right now.
Yeah.
That's what makes trauma problematic, right? And so when we reprocess it, which do you want me to talk about that a little bit? What that process is? Okay. Yeah, okay, great. So so just like I said, like, trauma gets stuck in the brain. There's different ways of thinking about this. I could just kind of like the file cabinet idea that with a normal, regular, everyday memory, like, oh, I had a sandwich for lunch, the brain is like, all right, we'll stick that into, long-term storage here. I don't really need to worry about that. Like, it's fine. When a trauma happens, which is something kind of, that's like out of the ordinary and scary, or there's a lot of emotion attached or whatever, it can get stuck. So like there's this file just sort of floating around and like nobody can find it, and like, but it's causing havoc. Like people, and they're not supposed to know that information. I don't know the brain, but it does kind of remind me of that movie Inside Out. Did you ever see that cartoon?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Sort of like the balls of the memories. I like that image, And so what we actually do with EMDR is I'll ask that question, 0 to 10, how disturbing is it? I might ask some other questions about the memory. And then we use eye movements back and forth, or tapping back and forth. You can tap on your legs or your arms, or sometimes sounds back and forth. There's something about that bilateral stimulation that helps the brain process the memory. the assumption, and nobody knows how this works, by the way. They don't know why. They just know that it works because we know nothing about the brain. Generally speaking, I mean, in a bigger picture, there's a lot we don't know. They think that when we're sleeping, maybe when we're in REM sleep, rapid eye movement, that might be what the brain is doing. Is processing memories. Yeah. And so it stimulates that. Another theory is that when you stimulate the working memory and the long-term memory at the same time, the disturbance of the long-term memory goes down. It's almost like the working memory, the right now in-person memory wins, and the disturbance goes down. You still remember the past event. It's just that the disturbance is less, and you can talk about it. You can have emotions about it, right? Like, gosh, I feel sad about that thing that happened when I was 8, but it doesn't cause me to have some sort of reaction in my body. It doesn't cause me to have negative thoughts about myself. It doesn't cause me to have this emotional reaction that's over the top from just, kind of what we'd consider like a normal, healthy response to something. Yeah. So I know it's a lot, but
no. I love it. So,
cool.
Okay. Technology has jumped at an exponential rate, right? Over the last 5 years, 10 years, a computer, what is it, like in the 80s was
right.
Whatever. Now, understanding the human brain, how much has that jumped over the last 5, 10, 15 years?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, that's the answer. It's not a great answer, but yeah, like I'm not sure because it's interesting. What pops in my mind when you say that is like, I think there's a lot of not literally political things, but sort of like, oh my gosh, like if you look at, are you familiar with the term, the DSM, it's a diagnostic statistical manual. So there's a book that has a list of all the diagnoses. So like bipolar depression, ADHD, like in this book. And I don't really use it that much, to be honest with you. I try not to diagnose, which is, something we also have the option. It's a lot used in insurance because you have to prove why your insurance is paying for you to go to therapy. Another reason why I don't use insurance. And in this manual, it's like some people have so many thoughts and opinions about this manual and this whole idea of diagnosing, and I don't know. Like now, I'm really curious. Like I need to really think about this some more because it's like I don't know. Like is a person bipolar or are there societal factors happening? Do we know? I don't know. So it's really confusing. It's really I kind of feel like right now we're just sort of throwing spaghetti at the wall and like hoping that it works. And oftentimes it does. Like I as a practitioner, again, try to find things that work, generally speaking. I like that. And I like when they work fast, which EMDR is also tends to be faster than talk therapy. But generally speaking, I don't know that we know a lot. And even then it's like so debated and discussed still. And yeah, I know it's not a great answer, but
No. I mean, I love it. I mean, I had a physical therapist on here, and something that blew my mind. And I guess a lot of physical therapists in the U.S. He was from, I think, Brazil, but they would say that to before you do a workout is to active stretch, okay, and
right.
then but there was a mindset locally, right, that you didn't want, or before maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that you didn't want to do it kind of active stretching. You wanted to actually do stagnant stretching.
Yeah.
Right. And so that changed over time. But if you've been teaching everyone to do stagnant stretching, you could have put people hurting them. So, I mean, with in your field, understanding how the mind works, is there stuff that you're constantly learning where you go, oh my gosh, I've been teaching it this way. I need to start veering a little bit now this direction. I mean, has that been kind of popping up? Okay.
Yes. And that's something too that I try to be extremely mindful of with myself, because I see a lot of therapists, a lot, I don't know, some kind of getting into their little silos and never really, even though we're required to do continuing education, it's almost like they just have their mindset and they do it this way. But again, we're talking about being creative, right? So I like to find other things that are more effective. If there's something that I think is more effective than EMDR, I will probably end up doing that, right? That's fine. We have to evolve. I did learn a technique recently called Flash. that we use with EMDR. And it's really cool because, again, for some reason, when you're, okay, this is going to be wild, but when you're tapping and thinking about something that you like, and then I tell you to blink 3 times and you tell me about the thing you like and you keep tapping, and then maybe I tell you to blink 3 times again. And then I ask you, we do that a few times. And then I ask you how much, how disturbing the memory is. The disturbance will usually go down of the memory. We're not even thinking about the memory. We're not even talking about the memory. We're talking about something completely different. And yet that's how the brain works. And it's magical and it's crazy. And I don't even know what's going on there.
Yeah. I got called out the other day that I didn't realize it, but I'll tap my feet when I eat chips because I made that. So I don't know if that's some problem.
I love it. There's something about even walking can actually help you process things. There's something about that back and forth, left, right parts of the brain. I don't know.
What's and we've kind of talked about pricing. We talked about building your business. Has there been any kind of other struggles in building your business and growing your business that you've kind of had to go through?
Such a good question. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I have a very interesting answer to this because it was a big surprise to me. So I told you that I love marketing and I love the hustle and I love, growing the business and growing. Here we go. Okay. Growing. Well, I grew my business to the point where it was full. And then I was like, oh, what do I do now? Right? Now, again, the business part is separate from the therapy part. So the therapy part was fine. I'm totally fine doing the work. That's not an issue. I got so much though out of the business part. And I felt sort of sad when it just kind of was running itself. I like being hands-on with it. And that was hard. And you know what? It was really hard finding anybody to talk to about it, especially other therapists. And I understand this because I felt the same way. It's like, oh, wow, like she's full in her practice, like good for her, I felt that way before, when I hear people whine about, like.
Have you thought about
so many clients? What's that?
Have you thought, is there any way to expand your practice, or have you thought about that?
Yeah, there are certain things that people do. It's such a good question. And I am kind of, there's certain things people do, including hiring other therapists. I don't necessarily want to do that because that would be too much business for me. Do you know what I mean? I like the nice balance of having my own business and doing therapy work. I don't necessarily want to manage other people or whatever. I've actually started doing something that's kind of fun, which I've been making videos on my YouTube channel. I don't know. I can't remember if I sent you that link, but I'll send it to you. Okay. And it's fun because a friend of mine just challenged therapists that she knew. She's like, hey, why don't you all make videos about what therapy is? Kind of like we're talking about, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, that sounds fun. So I've started doing a little video series on that. I do want to find ways to reach more people and, reach out to people. And I've thought about, I have a creative writing degree. And of course, I don't want to write a book. I've thought about it. But I'm like, oh God.
How do you, when you're doing the videos, because I've talked to some attorneys and they have to be very careful of what they say, because then people can take it as well, I was told by Rachel this. How do you separate that, or give enough information, or is it just disclaimers, or?
You can put disclaimers. I haven't, to be honest, with this little series. I probably will add some disclaimers. I haven't yet because I'm not really talking about like life things. I'm more talking about why is my therapist writing notes? What's that about? So I'm more talking about my role and then the actual process of therapy more than, okay, if you're having this relationship issue, you need to, I don't even know if I want to do videos like that because at least the way that I work, I feel again, it's so personal, it's so individual. And again, that's kind of where the creativity comes in. It's so creative that I don't really know what is best for people, generally speaking. I know what's best for people individually. Well, I don't know what's best for people, but they know. I just help them find it.
If someone's been listening right now and they kind of love, I guess, your way of looking at the world, and I know you're slammed with your clientele right now, but if they want to basically follow your videos, follow what you're put out there, what's the best platform or best way to do that?
Sure. They can find me on Facebook I think it's Rachel Moore, LMFT. That stands for Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist. Rachel Moore, LMFT. They can go to my website, which is rachelmoorecounseling.com. And also on my website, you'll see there's a note about having a free 15-minute phone consultation. I will talk to anybody if I can help them. So even though my practice is full right now, I may not be able to take them on as a client. I love to help people find therapists because it's really hard. It's harder than it should be to find therapists who are appropriate fit, to find therapists who have fees that work for people, have availability, things like that. So I'm happy to chat. Yeah.
And then one last question. We'll finish it off with this question.
Okay.
If you could talk back to your 4th grade self, the one that was doing the papers, is there any kind of advice you would give that kid?
Oh boy. That's a great question. I don't know. Just keep going. Keep doing it because you're going to have a fun 14-year career as a journalist, and then you're going to be a therapist. And remember that if your work isn't fun, don't do it anymore. Do work that's fun, and that's that. Then you'll win, and that's the main goal. Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, thank you, Rachel, for being on here. I love this. I got
welcome.
some great stuff. And anyone listening, I hope that you got some great nuggets from Rachel. Follow her channel, YouTube, website. We have all that stuff in the show notes. But yeah, thank you for being on here again, Rachel. And please, everyone, subscribe, share, and follow Rachel.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks for making my first live really easy.